Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's Learn at Lunch webinar. Today, we are going to hear from Assistant Extension Specialist Sara Siems as she covers some findings on rural businesses and resources available to these businesses. If you have questions, please ask them through the chat window by clicking the chat button at the bottom of the screen. And Sara, I will turn it over to you now.
All right, well, thank you, Brent, so much for having me, and thank you for providing this opportunity to share more about Create Bridges. At this time, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. So Create Bridges is an extension program, and it was formed because it was recognized that the jobs that rural communities had previously relied on were disappearing, and that service sector jobs, so jobs pertaining to retail, accommodations, tourism, and entertainment, or what we call the Create businesses, were really making up a significant percent of the remaining jobs in our rural communities. So Cooperative Extension and the Southern Rural Development Center partnered with funding from Walmart to strengthen service sector jobs in a region. And Create Bridges is an acronym. You'll see it here on the screen. It stands for Celebrating Retail, Accommodations, Tourism, and Entertainment by Building Rural Innovations and Developing Growth Economies. So you'll see why we refer to it just as Create Bridges. It's a bit of a mouthful. Make sure I can advance. All right. So phase one states, this is a partnership program, not just with OSU Extension, but with the University of Kentucky and University of Arkansas. Phase one states launched this pilot program in December of 2018. And we recently just added 3 new states to this pilot program in the summer or spring and summer of 2020. So North Carolina, Illinois, and New Mexico State are now participating in this Create Bridges extension program. So you'll see here highlighted the regions that are participating for Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky. And you might be asking yourself, how did we select these regions? Well, in the fall of 2018, we put out a call for applications statewide, and we asked regions to self-identify in a 2 to 5 county region and apply. Now, they did have to meet certain application criteria. So they had to demonstrate that they were economically distressed or that their workforce participation rate was lower than the state or national average. And then they had to demonstrate that they were considered rural by the ERES USDA definition. So the work of each region is supported by a state team, which is myself and others here with OSU Extension. And then our state teams are supported by a national team, which is housed at the Southern Rural Development Center at Mississippi State. And so the SRDC really kind of coordinates as our umbrella organization for all of Create Bridges. So Create Bridges really has 3 purposes in these communities that we work with. The first one is to really raise the awareness of the role that retail, accommodations, tourism, and entertainment play in the local workforce and economy. And then the second is to determine challenges, barriers, and opportunities related to those businesses, which we primarily accomplished through 2 survey efforts, one with retail and hospitality businesses, and then another survey effort with incumbent retail and hospitality employees. And I'm going to share more about those survey efforts in a few minutes. And then we summarized those surveys, and we used that information to really inform, develop, and implement strategies to strengthen these sectors within the region. So why take a regional approach to this program, and what makes it different than, say, a citywide or even a countywide initiative? With the regional approach, this program really draws on collaborations that span beyond county lines to make the best use of resources and partners. And there are a few advantages to that. One being it provides a more ideal number of participants. So we have more businesses to work with. We have more employees to work with. And smaller communities can complement larger communities within a county or region. Working in a regional area also allows us to pool program resources and build partnerships, which can especially be successful when working with our rural communities. And then all of this together helps to really increase the likelihood of economic development in these rural communities that we're working with. As I mentioned before, Create Bridges really takes a two-part approach to economic development. So we're not just focusing on strengthening the businesses or providing business owners and managers with resources, but we're also interested in working with their employees and providing resources and training to those employees and have this kind of workforce development focus as well. So our goal with these two approaches is that they will actually work together to strengthen the sectors, these Create Bridges sectors. I briefly mentioned the surveys again, and I will share more about that. And we also have the summary of our survey findings online if you're interested to read through them in their entirety. You'll see here that we have quite a few local stakeholders. So we worked with local economic developers, education institutions, workforce development, local governments, of course, the businesses and the employees, even nonprofits within a region that also support these sectors. We pulled all these resources or all these stakeholders together to form regional steering committees in these three to five county areas. All right, so I'm going to dive in now to our needs assessment process. So we really wanted this program and what we developed to be data driven. So we conducted two main needs assessments. One was a business retention and expansion survey, which we modified from the University of Minnesota survey to target retail and hospitality businesses. And in Oklahoma, we actually used somewhat of a hybrid model to collect these survey responses. So if you're familiar with business retention and expansion, and I could likely do an entire webinar on just the BR&E program that we had as a component of this program. But we used the traditional volunteer visitor model, where we actually went out to communities and we trained local volunteers to visit their local businesses and conduct a confidential survey, which then they would turn all those surveys back into us here at the university, and we summarized them to share back with local communities. The other business retention and expansion model that we used to collect surveys was a roundtable model. And that was really kind of interesting and innovative. It was something that we came up with our Arkansas partners and Kentucky partners. And we brought in business owners to a workshop. So we brought them in together. We set them in groups at tables with a moderator. And then that moderator went through the survey with these small groups of business owners. The responses at these roundtable workshops were still kept confidential, but it really provided a great opportunity for these business owners to network and share common challenges and actually come up with some great ideas to address common issues. So we were really happy that we were able to use that model as well. Then the needs assessment that is pretty unique to Create Bridges is our employee perspective survey. So business retention and expansion it's a very successful economic development tool that's been around for about 30 years. But it really only takes into account the business owner's perspective. So it asks them to share challenges, opportunities, and information kind of related to their business. And it asks about their employees. And it asks, what skills do they need to see in their employees? What skills do they have or not have? But it's really only from the business owner's perspective. So we were really interested to hear from the employees themselves regarding many of these topics, and then compare what the employee responses were to what their employers were saying. And again, the entirety of both of these summaries can be found on our website, which I'll share those links at the end. So first we'll go through just briefly a couple of the business survey themes. We surveyed almost 70 businesses in the 3-county area, and then we surveyed about 100 employees. So here's a picture of one of our roundtable workshops that we held with business owners. The employee surveys were done entirely online. We developed a Qualtrics survey that we sent out to these communities and collected all of those responses online. So one of the questions we asked was, how do you see your business changing in the next 3 years? And we were really encouraged to see that a lot of these businesses said that they were planning to renovate or expand or add equipment. So the caveat that I will share is that we wrapped up our survey efforts about 2 months prior to COVID. But you know, we were looking forward to really working with these businesses and how they had planned to change. So we're going to talk a little bit too about how we pivoted to address challenges that they faced once COVID hit a lot of our communities. So again, some more of the common themes that emerged among the businesses is that they would really like to see more support from their local leadership, which includes extension, local government and chambers, and that these towns really see tourism as a valuable economic driver and would like more resources to draw out of town visitors. So as we're looking for ways, even through extension, to engage with our communities, you know, these are some of the things that they're desiring, some of their needs to be a successful town or community. So, you know, if you're doing some program planning and you'd like to reach out or use some of these resources, I would be more than happy to help you. So quickly, some employee survey themes. When I mentioned earlier about bringing in the employee perspective, one of the themes that we found most interesting was comparing the business owners' responses about employee retention, which, as you can imagine, they shared challenges with regard to attracting employees, to retaining employees, and oftentimes they would attribute this to an inability to offer full benefits as a mom and pop retail store, or the inability to offer a competitive wage. But what we found interesting was when we asked employees questions around the topic of retention, most of them said that they really liked their employer and they would like to stay with their current employer. So then we followed up by saying, well, what would you need to be retained by your employer to stay there? And a lot of them said training and upskilling. So that's what makes this slide so interesting, or the information on this slide so interesting, is that, you know, sure, any employee would love increased pay or additional benefits, but overwhelmingly, they were looking to increase their skills to do their job role better, or possibly to provide some upward mobility into managerial roles, and they simply weren't receiving it. So they wanted to stay with their current employer, but they weren't really receiving any training beyond orientation to move up the career ladder or advance. And so it could be likely that that was a major issue with retention, maybe even more so than what the business owners originally thought was the issue. And so this is where Create Bridges and that initiative of workforce training can really step in and help these small businesses with resources to provide employee training, upskilling, and those sorts of programs. So again, the elephant in the room is that in spring of 2020, we had all of these great data. We were excited to launch strategies and programs to strengthen rural retail and hospitality businesses, and COVID hit. So what did we do? We spent some time circling back around to these communities, to these business owners, to a lot of our local partners that we had been working with. And we asked them to share what were their emerging needs now, or what were new issues as it related to COVID, so that we could kind of pivot and provide either different resources or additional resources. And one of the things we found very interesting initially, which I think a year into the pandemic, we've all seen, but for a lot of these communities, COVID-19 didn't really create new challenges. What it did is it amplified existing challenges. So where access to reliable broadband had, been kind of a pain point before, now it was crucial that they get access to reliable broadband. Before, where a lot of these businesses may have an online presence, they may have the shell of a Facebook business page, all of a sudden they really needed an online presence to promote their business, to maybe sell products online, to share how their hours of operation have changed, or are they doing curbside pickup. So we worked with our other partnering states, with Arkansas and Kentucky, and we worked to pull together resources and educational materials to help these businesses be successful and competitive as they were being quickly thrust into a digital environment. So while the majority of this program does target specific communities and specific counties, a lot of the resources we developed with our other states can be utilized more broadly. So that's what I'm here to really share today. And I would encourage you to visit our website. So on the last slide here in a minute, we have our website link where you will find resources to help businesses get their website set up, best practices for social media, how retailers can find success despite COVID, digital marketing efforts, and rebuilding a business post-COVID. All right, so with that, again, the links are all on these last two slides. So I would definitely encourage you to go check those out, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions on how to utilize these resources in your communities. And then I know that Brent has a survey link here for the webinar. So again, thank you. I know we went through that kind of quickly, but I hope that you'll use these resources in your communities. Does anyone have any questions about Create Bridges or any of the resources we put together?
And I did also share that survey link in the chat
Oh, great.
window. So yeah, feel free to type questions if anyone has questions there. You're welcome to ask questions.
And if something like a business retention and expansion program, if that's something that you're interested in conducting in your community, I would be more than happy to visit with you about that. Right before COVID, we'd actually started working with another county in Southeast Oklahoma to launch a program. And then unfortunately with COVID, we weren't able to, but in the last year, not only pivoting ourselves from in-person, but also working with these new states that we've brought on board during the pandemic, we really devised a lot of ways that this program can be conducted virtually. So maybe whereas previously it was much more challenging, now we have ways to get this program out to communities if we're still kind of operating in this virtual space.
That is good to know. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the presentation. And I would also like to take this moment while we're waiting for people to ask their questions. We have another webinar scheduled on April 20th at noon again, and it will be Dr. Amy Hagerman will talk about the most recent round of CFAP payments from the USDA. So that's what we have scheduled next. So if there are any other questions, please ask them now.
Right, if we have a few minutes, I could pull up our website and just kind of navigate through that quickly and show folks where to find resources.
Certainly, you are welcome to do that.
Okay, yeah, we've got a few minutes, so I'll stop sharing this screen and I'll pull up our website. All right, so you're using our website screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So our website has now migrated to our new platform look. So you'll find it at extension.okstate.edu/programs/create bridges. But again, those links are all in the slides that I shared. So this website does share more about the program, the regions that are involved. So if you're interested to read more about those regions. And then under news and resources is where you'll find a lot of those links to programs and resources that I mentioned. So here for Sandstone Hills, if you're interested to see the full business retention and expansion survey or employee perspective survey, you can access those there. We did a SWOT analysis with the communities, and you'll see those responses as well. And then you'll see links to our online marketing and social media best practices. There are also resources that a larger extension team worked to put together for communities. A lot of you may have already accessed this page, but it's also linked from our Home Create Bridges page. So again, I would definitely encourage you all to visit this site and make use of any of the resources that we've developed and shared. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sarah. I still don't see any questions, so I think we will wrap up the webinar now. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will see you on April 20th at noon. So until then, goodbye.
Thanks again.